So as we've seen in previous chapters, there's loads of ways in which you can make music with Logic Pro without actually having to record sounds of your own. But if you really want to personalize your sound, if you want to bring instruments, your voice, or the work of other musicians that you're working with to your project, then sooner or later you're going to want to plug in microphones and make recordings of your own. And we're going to do that right now. So in order to make a recording into Logic Pro, because your computer won't have microphone inputs directly as part of its own hardware, you need an audio interface, which is effectively a kind of bridge between the opportunity to record real-world sound and Logic Pro as a program ready to receive those sounds. So the first thing you're going to want to do is obviously to plug your microphone in to your audio interface. So in order to do this, obviously, firstly, I would recommend putting your microphone on a stand so that you're not holding it in your hand. That's going to ensure that you don't get noise through the actual body of the microphone itself while you're making recordings, and also it leaves your hands free to operate Logic. So firstly, if you can, get your microphone on a stand, and then obviously what you're going to want to do is to take a microphone cable, referred to usually as an XLR lead, from the microphone into your audio interface. Now, audio interfaces come in lots of different shapes and sizes, and your interface will probably either have 1, 2, 4, or maybe even 8 microphone inputs, and you can use any of them. They're all the same and they're all ready to be configured, ready to make the recordings that you want to make. Now, this is perhaps the most crucial piece of information. The audio interface is the place where you're going to actually configure the levels of your recording. It's a really kind of common misconception that when you fire up Logic, ready to receive the input from your audio interface, the fader, the volume fader for the channel onto which you're recording is going to be responsible for the level. That's not the case at all. What that controls is the playback volume of the sounds that you record. So once you've made a recording, yes, that fader will adjust its volume. But what it won't do is to adjust the level going into the microphone. And the reason why that matters so much is because lots of the sounds that we record play back at different volumes. If I record hand claps really close to a microphone, they're going to be loud. Whereas if I whisper into a microphone, the volume of that is going to be much, much quieter. So what I want to do is to be in a position where I can adjust what we call the input gain, the volume of the microphone at source, so that Logic is recording the optimum volume. Now, when you install your audio interface, you're going to discover that you're going to run a little program which will install the driver so that Logic can see the interface that you're using, but it will nearly always come with a kind of bridging piece of software as well. So a control panel, if you like, which allows you to control what we call that gain so that you can get the level right, ready for Logic to receive it. So my audio interface is an Apollo 8P made by Universal Audio, and its bridging interface is called Console. Now what I'm doing here is I'm using Command and Tab, and what that's allowing me to do is to see the other programs that I've got open in addition to Logic. And if I bring Console to the front, what I can see is the channel ready for the recording that I want to make. Now, it just so happens that I've plugged my microphone into channel number 6. Remember, you can use any channel you like, and I've used channel number 6. Now, what I need to do to make a microphone recording is firstly, I need to switch the input source to microphone. Now, don't worry if your bridging application doesn't look exactly like this. It will look similar. You'll have the opportunity to switch between microphone sources for mics, line level sources for things like synthesizers, and maybe even a high Z input, which is going to be used for recording instruments like guitars or electric basses. So I'm switching mine to microphone, and then my gain dial here is going to be responsible for controlling level. Now then, depending on which type of microphone you're using, you may also need what we refer to as phantom power, 48 volts. Now this is true for condenser microphones. Dynamic microphones don't require this 48 volt phantom power button, so be careful, be sure you're checking what sort of a microphone you're using, and turn that on if appropriate. And you can see that by doing that, I'm starting to get some level from the microphone that's sort of in this room ready for me to record into. So let's bring that in now so we can configure levels properly. So I'm just going to bring my mic in here. And now what I can see as I begin to talk into the microphone is the level that's coming into this channel. And obviously I can see that that's responding to my voice as I speak into it. And obviously what I can do here is to configure its level. Now you'll notice that what I've done for now is to keep this channel muted. We'll come back to why I've done that for a moment. What I have a chance to do as I push the gain level up is to see the increase in volume as I push it and push it and push it. And you can see now, even though I'm not speaking any more loudly, this level is far too loud. You can see the red light has come on at the top of the input channel. As I drop it back down, we get into a level which is more appropriate. And you can see that if I turn it down too much, then maybe the level is going to be too quiet. So what I'm looking to do is to make sure that I never get into the red zone, but at the same time, I'm trying to record the healthiest level I can without running the risk of distortion. And something like this looks like it might work quite nicely to me. Now, the reason why I've kept this muted is because when you come to make recordings, it's worth bearing in mind that if you're monitoring through your speakers at the same time as making recordings, then the sound that comes into Logic will then play out from your speakers and it will then make its way back into this microphone, and we might end up with what's called a feedback loop. So part of the reason why I've kept this muted is because what I need to do next is to make sure that no volume is going to my speakers as I make my recording. Otherwise, I run the risk of that feedback. So what a lot of people do when they're making recordings, if they obviously want to be able to hear what they're performing to, is to put on a pair of headphones. So it's worth having a pair of headphones available to you so that you can put those on, make your recording, and obviously, particularly if you're singing along to a backing track, it's going to be really important that you know where to come in and obviously stay in tune as you're making a recording. For now, I'm just going to make a voice recording, so it doesn't matter quite so much. What I am going to do though is to make sure I don't get that feedback, I'm going to turn the volume down to my speakers now. Okay, so I've turned my speakers off effectively, and now what I'm in a position to do is to unmute this channel and check that I haven't got any feedback, and that's working well. And now what I can do is to come back into Logic. So within Logic itself, what I need to do on this audio track that I have set up ready for recording, remember, if you need to set up an audio track from scratch, press plus, select an audio track here, and then press create. And now I'll get a second track, which is the same as the first. What I need to do is to make sure that I'm matching the input number that I've plugged my microphone into so that Logic is receiving its input from the right place on your audio interface. Now, if you've plugged your microphone into input number 1, then input 1 is the default choice within Logic and you won't have to make an adjustment there. But if you've chosen any other number, make sure that that channel is set up with the correct input number. And now if I press the record button, what I have a chance to do is to check the level that's coming in from my audio interface. So as I speak, I can see the level that's coming in. Now this looks maybe a little bit too loud to me. So what I can do again is to toggle back to console, this bridging piece of software, which is going to allow me to configure levels. And I'm just going to bring this gain dial down a bit. Now this is really important. As I said before, what a lot of people do is to reach for the volume fader within Logic, but you can see that even if I turn this all the way down to 0, the level is still coming in. It doesn't make any difference to the incoming audio level. So that's clearly not the place where I can control the level of the recording that's coming in. So I'll put the volume fader back up. Let's come back into console, make it a tiny bit more of an adjustment. I'm going to turn that down a little bit more. And then back in Logic, if I want to make a recording, I can just simply press record. And as the playhead moves across the screen, I can obviously begin to make my recording. So I'm now making a voice recording of exactly what I'm saying right now, and you can see the waveform coming in on the channel that you're recording onto in real time. And when you're ready to stop recording, you can just press stop. So there's the recording that I've made. And what I can do when I finish recording is to turn off the recording monitoring light so that we're no longer listening to the input source. Now that's going to be really important, again, to make sure that we avoid feedback. I want to make sure that I've turned that off so that the microphone isn't still live, and then we can turn our speakers back on and check the recording. And as the playhead moves across the screen, I can obviously begin to make my recording. So I'm now making a voice recording of exactly what I'm saying right now, and you can see the waveform coming in on the channel that you're recording onto in real time. And when you're ready to stop recording, you can just press stop. So there's the recording that I made. I can move my microphone out of the way because I've finished recording now. And so if you're looking to sort of set up a channel for recording, this is exactly how you can do it. Just follow these steps. Remember, you're going to need that bridging piece of software. And remember that every audio interface that you buy will have something equivalent to console. It will have a software sort of area where you can configure exactly how you want to record. And remember the steps we took. Firstly, we made sure that we were selecting a microphone source. My microphone is a condenser microphone, so I needed to turn on phantom power. And remember, the gain dial is really crucial. That's where I'm going to control the level of the incoming recording.